Here's something I've always found a little strange. If I told you there was an MMO where you could explore almost the entirety of Middle-earth, walk from the Shire to Mordor, visit Rivendell, Moria, Rohan, Gondor, and dozens of other iconic locations, play through nearly 20 years of content, own a home, join a kinship, raid, craft, roleplay, PvP, and experience one of the most faithful adaptations of Tolkien's world ever created, you'd probably assume it was one of the biggest MMOs on the planet. But then you mention the name The Lord of the Rings Online, and a surprising number of gamers respond with, "Wait, that's still around?" I've heard that question more times than I can count. And it got me thinking, how does a game like LOTRO become one of gaming's best kept secrets? Because I don't think the answer is as simple as people just don't know about it. On paper, LOTRO has almost everything going for it. It's built around one of the most beloved fantasy worlds ever created. It has an enormous open world, a main story that stretches across nearly 2 decades of updates, one of the friendliest MMO communities you'll find, regular expansions, a dedicated player base, and one of the strongest senses of place I've ever experienced in a game. If someone described all of that to me without mentioning the name, I'd probably assume that it was one of the biggest MMORPGs in the genre. So why isn't it? I think part of that answer comes down to something we don't often think about. Being a great game and being a visible game are two very different things. Great games don't automatically get discovered. I think it's easy to assume that if a game is good enough, people will naturally find it. But that's not really how gaming works anymore. Think about how you discover new games today. Maybe you see somebody streaming them on Twitch. Maybe a YouTube creator covers them. Maybe they start showing up in your TikTok feed. Maybe a big gaming website writes about them. Or maybe one of your friends tells you to check it out. Discovery today is driven by visibility. And visibility isn't always tied to quality. Sometimes it's tied to marketing budgets. Sometimes it's tied to content creators. And sometimes it's simply about being the newest thing on the market. LOTRO doesn't really fit into any of those categories. It's not the newest MMO. It's not backed by one of the largest publishers in gaming. And it isn't constantly dominating social media. That makes it surprisingly easy for people to simply miss it. The MMO industry has changed also. When LOTRO launched back in 2007, the internet looked very different. There was no TikTok. YouTube was still in its infancy. Streaming wasn't part of everyday gaming culture. Today, games live and die based on online visibility. A new expansion launches, and within hours, there's hundreds of video reactions, Twitch streams, tier lists, build guides, podcasts, and social media clips. That constant stream of content keeps games in people's minds. LOTRO has never really played that game. Not because there's nothing to talk about, but because the creator ecosystem around LOTRO has always been relatively small compared to other MMOs. That naturally limits how many new players ever discover it. That means that the community becomes the marketing. And I think that's where LOTRO is different. Most games rely heavily on marketing campaigns. LOTRO has relied on something else. Its players. Think about how many people started playing because a friend recommended it, or because they stumbled across a Reddit thread asking for a relaxing MMO, or because someone in another MMO said, if you love Tolkien, you should really give LOTRO a try. Word of mouth has carried this game for years. In a lot of ways, the community has become LOTRO's marketing department. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons the community feels the way it does. People aren't here because they saw a flashy advertisement. They're here because another player cared enough to share something that they genuinely enjoyed. But maybe that's starting to change. Lately, I've started noticing something interesting. I'm seeing more creators covering LOTRO, more players asking questions, more returning veterans giving the game another look. The move to 64-bit servers has generated some new renewed interest. New expansions continue to bring players back year after year. Legendary servers have given many people a chance to experience the game in a completely different way. And every time someone discovers LOTRO for the first time, they seem to have the same reaction. I can't believe I didn't know this existed. That's a pretty powerful statement, because it tells me the issue isn't necessarily the game itself. It's that so many people simply haven't been introduced to it. So here's the thing. I don't think LOTRO needs to become the biggest MMO in the world. I don't think it needs to compete directly with every new MMO that launches. What I do think is that more people deserve to know it exists. Not because it's perfect. It isn't. It has its flaws. Every long-running MMO does. But if you love Tolkien, and if you enjoy immersive worlds, and you appreciate slower-paced adventures and communities that still value the journey, then LOTRO offers something that's becoming increasingly rare in modern gaming. It offers a world that invites you to live in it, not just rush through it. And I think that's worth talking about. Maybe that's the real reason I've spent so much time creating LOTRO content. Not because I'm trying to convince everyone that it's the greatest MMO ever made, but because I think too many people have never had the chance to experience a game that's quietly been building one of the most faithful versions of Middle-earth for nearly 20 years. Maybe LOTRO doesn't need to become the biggest MMO in gaming. Maybe it just needs to stop being one of gaming's best-kept secrets. So I'm curious what you think. How did you first discover LOTRO? Was it a friend? Was it a YouTube video? The movies? The books? Or have you been here since the beginning? Let me know your story down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this discussion, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribed. I've got plenty more LOTRO guides, discussions, and adventures through Middle-earth on the way. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video, the next short, or live on stream. Until then, have a great day, and I'll see you in Middle-earth.